Aloha, this is Greg from Maui Home Buyers, and today I want to talk about the different ways of selling your house. And hopefully, from this article, you're going to learn the different options in terms of the methods that you can use to sell your house or your condo on Maui or anywhere in Hawaii, and you'll have enough information to make the decision on what is the best option for you in terms of which method is most appropriate for you and your family's needs for how to sell your house or condo in Hawaii. So let's dive right into it. First off, we'll talk about the first, most obvious and most common method of selling a piece of property, or also referred to as a piece of real estate, a home, condo, or vacant land in Hawaii. And that method is listing for sale with a realtor. That is the most popular route of selling, and certainly the most common. And I think what most people think of selling their home is what they would picture is calling a realtor. They post it on MLS and hope to find a buyer that route. So, what are some of the pros and cons of selling your property in this method? The pros are, I would say, hands down, you're most likely to achieve the highest gross sales price through this method. And pretty often, also, you would achieve the highest net sales price, meaning the amount of cash that you actually walk away with after all of the commissions, realtors' fees and closing costs and all the other expenses involved with selling the home. You want to know, what's more important than the gross sales price. The net sales price is really what you want to compare when considering this option and comparing it to other options, because we see this a lot where a seller will see a house that, maybe on Zillow or one of the other websites, they'll see that a house down the street from them sold for a certain amount, and the seller will usually, it's natural for them to say, well, I want my house to sell for that amount too. But there's a lot of variables to take into consideration. If you are selling with a realtor and your house is identical to the one down the street, then you should sell for the same amount. Absolutely. Unless there's a different, if they have a better view or if there's another differentiator. But all things being equal, then in a flat market, meaning prices are not increasing or decreasing, then the realtor, I like to think that a realtor would be doing a poor job if you didn't sell for the same amount in those circumstances. Now, that brings us back to the difference between the gross price and the net price. So again, the gross price is not really important when comparing to the other methods of selling. And I say that because let's say you could sell your house with a realtor for $900,000. And after all the fees and commissions and everything, let's say that you were going to walk away. For example, I'm just making up numbers here, but let's say you were going to walk away with $825,000 after the commissions, closing costs, maybe making some repairs, or whatever other expenses you have. And your other option was selling directly to somebody for $850,000. Now, would you prefer to sell for $900,000 and have this higher gross sales price, but only walk away with $825,000? Or would you rather sell for $850,000? And even though you don't have you have a lower, let's call it a bragging price, right? Because it's the price that you can tell everybody that you sold for. It may be lower than that 900,000, but you're actually, if you're walking away with that 850,000 all in your pocket and there's no fees or expenses, obviously the 850,000 is a much better deal than the 825,000, or the 900,000 rather, with the realtor. So that's a big factor that you want to make sure you're considering when you're comparing the ability or the option to sell with a realtor compared to the different methods of selling that are available to you. The other pros of having a realtor sell your home is that you have representation. This is really important. I think that a lot of people don't put as much value on this these days as they should. I think that having somebody that is your fiduciary and has your interest in mind, and they have a license on the line and they have a lot at stake to lose, I think there's a lot to say about that. Depending on your circumstances and your knowledge and your comfort level with knowing real estate and knowing what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, then you really don't need the realtor, or maybe you don't. I mean, that's up to you to decide. But a lot of people don't. Like for me personally, I'm not a licensed realtor, but if I was selling my house, I don't feel that I need to have a licensed realtor represent me because I've worked in the real estate industry for 15 years. In fact, one of my jobs was training realtors. For a really high end, one of the most successful real estate brokerages on Maui. So I understand what they do very well, and I'm very confident in my knowledge. So I don't feel the need to have a realtor represent me, but a lot of people should and would want to have that representation. So that's another pro. Um, Another pro is the again, you have a wider, how to explain that, you'll have a wider buyer pool that will be seeing your property. So the realtor is typically, if they're doing a good job, which hopefully you're going to hire a good realtor that's an expert and knows what they're doing. You want to find the best realtors. That's really important. You want the best realtor to sell your house. You don't want to just call a realtor that that's a friend of a friend. But the best realtors are going to get your house in front of a lot of buyers. And the advantage of that is you're more likely to get a good buyer, right? So the more people that see it, the more likely you are to get a buyer that jumps on it, and maybe you find somebody that just falls in love with it, right? That's the goal, is you want to find that person out there that just for some reason your house just, they love it more than all the other houses available, and they just have to have your house. And it doesn't happen very much, honestly. It's I think we like to think of it in our heads, and I like to think of it myself too when I sell a house. But the reality is most buyers out there is they'll fall in love with certain houses, but they're also realistic. It's like when I was shopping for my primary residence, there were certainly properties that I fell in love with, but if they were more than I wanted to spend, it didn't really matter. I wasn't going to pay um, overpay just because I liked the house more than the others. So there was always plenty of options out there. But in any case, yeah, so that's another advantage of the realtor, is that they will hopefully get a lot of people to see your property. Some of the cons, the disadvantages of listing your home on Maui for sale with a realtor are that you have a longer timeline most of the time, depending on what you're comparing it to. But generally, if you're going to list with a realtor, you're going to expect to, depending on the current market conditions. Now, in the year 2021, real estate in Hawaii and in Maui and everywhere in the country was very hot, and selling a house might have taken a month or two. In a lot of cases, a lot of times you could sell even maybe in a month, or just over a month was not unheard of. But from start to finish, I would say on average, you'll probably want to say the bare minimum might be about 2 months. And the average time to sell your house with a realtor in Hawaii is probably going to be more around that 3 to 6 month kind of range. So usually what we'll see is a couple weeks of the beginning process of you meeting with the realtor, discussing price, and then they're going to draw up a contract, which we refer to as the exclusive right to sell listing agreement, also referred to as listing agreement. And they'll have you sign that contract. Be very careful. Make sure that you read and understand that contract very well. We've had a lot of sellers call us that were frustrated because they did not know that that contract required them to pay the commissions to the realtor, even if the realtor did nothing. So now most realtors are not going to do nothing, but again, you want to make sure you protect yourself. We've had a lot of people come to us and say, they go out and looking for someone to buy their house, and they find us because they were frustrated their realtor wasn't selling the house quick enough. And they find out that they're still required to pay the realtor the commissions, even though the homeowner actually did the work of finding someone to buy their house quickly. Most reputable and honest realtors will, depending on how much work they've put into selling your house, they will usually work with you and either let you out of the commissions or just try to get reimbursed for any expenses that they have into your property. But be aware of that. So again, the timeline is one of the big things that right now I would say, like I said, you're going to spend a few weeks in that initial process. The realtor, once you have the listing agreement signed, the realtor is going to have a process in which they go through to get your house listed on the MLS and actually visible to the buyers. That usually is going to include having certain things done around the house. They're going to have you clean the house first off. Any realtor that does not have you clean the house, that's, to me, it's usually kind of a little bit of a red flag. Hopefully they want your house to look outstanding in the pictures, right? They want the buyers to see your house and say, wow, that's beautiful. It looks like it's in great condition, so on and so forth. They don't want the buyer to see the pictures of your house and say, oh, it looks like the people that live there are, messy or slobs, or, it's a disaster there. And, because it makes it a lot harder for the buyer to see the house first off, because if there's, which most of us have our personal belongings out on day-to-day life, and so you can't quite see the quality of the countertops, of the flooring, and these, the walls, if you have pictures all over them. So it's a lot harder for the buyer to see what the house actually looks like. So most good realtors, again, will have you clean up the appearance of your home. They'll ask you to do some painting and, just small things that will make the house look much better. Painting is just one of those things that it's relatively cheap, although in Hawaii, even now, painting can be, I think we just paid $6,000 to paint a 1-bedroom condo. So it's getting really expensive. But again, relatively, you have to consider the inflation we've had, and the cost of real estate, the prices of home prices in Hawaii, and everything else. So if you compare that to replacing the floors or replacing the kitchen in your home, painting is certainly a much cheaper, easier, quicker thing to do that makes a really big impact on how well your house will show to prospective buyers. So again, realtors, they'll likely, depending on the condition of your home, want you to do just a few things to make your house look better. If you don't have furniture, a lot of times they're going to strongly suggest that you stage the home, that you put new furniture in the home to make it look like a home. So the buyer can see, again, they want to see those pictures. They want it to look clean, new, fresh, and homey. They want the buyer to be able to see it and envision their family living there comfortably. And those are some of the things that they're going to want you to do in order to achieve that. So, of course, that's a lot to take in there, and it's all those things shouldn't take more than maybe a couple weeks. If you're busy with other things, it may take a month or so. Um, and once that's all complete, the realtor will have a professional photographer. Hopefully, again, if you hired a good realtor, they should have a professional photographer come out and take really, really high quality, great pictures of your home to put into the listing on MLS. So again, I want to touch on this. If your realtor is not doing these things, it doesn't mean that they're not a good realtor, but I would take a very, very close look at what their qualifications are. Um, you want to make sure you know how to find the best realtors in Hawaii, in Maui, that will sell your house for the highest possible sales price and value. You don't want to just say, oh, I know this person, I went to high school with as a realtor, so let me call them. Sure, you should talk to them and you should find out what their statistics are. But it's much more important that your realtor is one of the top producing realtors and is really good at their job than your relationship with the realtor. So for me personally, I would much rather have a realtor sell my home that I didn't really like, that if they were the best realtor on Maui. Um, and the reason is because the best realtor is usually going to be able to get you a higher sales price, because they're an expert in selling your house and getting the most money for it. So that I would much rather have that realtor than have a realtor that I really like and is a friend of mine, and but they've only ever done, maybe 3 sales in their whole life, and they've been a realtor for 10 years. If they've been a realtor for 10 years and they've only done 3 sales, then they're probably not the realtor that you want to sell your house in Hawaii. So again, making sure that you have the best realtor in Maui or in Oahu or Kauai, wherever you are, you want that best realtor to sell your house. It's really important that and some of the qualifications you can ask for is how many transactions they have done in each of the last 3 or 4 years. I would ask how much dollar volume in sales they have done in the last 3 or 4 years. And I would ask how many of sellers have they listed and sold homes for, compared to how many of those transactions were buyer representation. Because if they're going to be selling your house on Maui, you want a realtor that has listed a lot of other houses before. So those are just some of the things you want to make sure you check with a realtor to make sure that they're the most qualified and the best fit to sell your house in Hawaii. Now, let's move on to the next option. So we've covered the first and most common method of selling. I'm sorry. Actually, there is just a couple more things on that method. We talked about the con was being the timeline, and basically, to wrap that up, I'm getting ahead of myself here. We didn't finish this section. We talked about the whole process of getting the house listed. From then you have the showings, the open houses, and the negotiations, which can take anywhere from, I would say, usually about a week is the shortest, to, it could go on forever, right? Sometimes you see a house that's been listed on the market for a year or 2 years, or even more. So usually that means there's something wrong with the house, or they're just asking for too much. Because if you list your house for too much, it's not going to sell. Nobody's going to buy it. Um, and you'll have to drop the price to make it sell. So, again, back to that timeline, you're going to, I would say within, on average, depending on how many of those things you need to do, you should have your house listed for sale within a month, at the most. Hopefully it's only a week or so, but, hiring the photographer, and if you need staging and painting, those things will take a few weeks too. So, you get your house listed. Again, you're going to go through the negotiations. You'll hopefully be having buyers come for showings. Again, going back to the good realtors usually are going to ask you, along with cleaning your house, they're going to want you to have your personal items put away. You want your house to be clean and presentable and look really nice to the buyers. And you're going to want to also take personal items like pictures. You don't want anything that is yours personally, that the buyer would see and say, oh, this is somebody else's home. You want that buyer to come into your house and see it as their home. So you want to take down, most of the time, not everybody agrees with this, I think, but you want to take down personal, family pictures of yourself, personal, knickknacks and things like that, so that the house does not look like your home. You want it to look like a new home that is ready for this new family to come in and make it their own. Again, once you've had those showings, you're going to have open houses. You're usually, this is one of the cons, also, I would say, is that when you're listing your house with a realtor in Maui, your realtor is going to almost always have you leave the property anytime they need to do a showing or have an open house. So that's a little bit of an inconvenience depending on what your situation is, but they'll usually be anywhere from an hour, about the minimum, I would say, usually a couple hours, to maybe half a day or so if they're having an open house, where the realtor will want you to be out of the house and not be disturbing the buyers, because it can be pretty uncomfortable for the buyer to be coming into your home and they don't know you, and they want to go look through your bathroom and all these things, that when the person that lives there is present, it just makes them uncomfortable, and they tend to not really look as close as they want to, and they'll usually just say, kind of get in and out real quick, and they won't end up making an offer. So it's best if you are not there during those showings. So that's a little bit of an inconvenience for most people. Again, the next step is going to be, hopefully that realtor is going to be able to bring you multiple offers from different buyers, and you can compare them and decide which one's best. Usually you'll have the different kind of offers will be maybe an offer that's closer to your listing price, but they have a financing contingency, which means they're depending on the bank to give them a mortgage, and they don't have to buy the house if they don't get the mortgage. And they'll have a longer closing period, so they might need 45 days. It's common in Hawaii to even go up to 60 days, and sometimes even more, because everything takes a little longer in Hawaii. So, and they'll also, want to have thorough inspections and all of those things. So that's one of the offer types that we see a lot. Then the other end of the spectrum would be a cash offer, which a realtor can, is common for realtors to be able to get. But usually with their cash offers, it's going to be for a much lower sales price. And they're going to, they'll probably want all the inspections and everything also. But they'll usually be able to offer a quicker closing timeline. So instead of the 45 or 60 days, they might do 30 days, sometimes less. But they again, they're usually, because they know that the cash offer is so much more attractive, they're usually going to be a much lower than the offer from the buyer that needs to get a mortgage. So, yeah, those are two things to consider. The financing contingency is a big deal. You want to make sure you understand that before you accept an offer, because once you accept the offer, when a realtor brings you an offer, they have a 14-page long purchase contract, and that's a Hawaii Association of Realtors official document, and it's a legal contract. So make sure you understand that very well. They have the right to buy that house, and you have to sell it to them. Now, they don't have to buy it, but you do have to sell your house to them. So that's the important thing to understand, is that in most cases, now the contract can be edited and revised to say whatever the buyer and sellers, realtors agree on. But for the most part, the buyer will have the right to cancel at different stages throughout the purchase, and the seller generally does not. The seller usually can only cancel if the buyer fails to perform, meaning if the buyer was supposed to make a deposit within 3 days of the agreement, then, and the buyer doesn't make that deposit, then the seller usually has the option to cancel within a certain time period. So usually, within, if they didn't make the deposit on the third day, then you would have maybe 5 days after that to cancel. And if you didn't cancel by that fifth day, then you're stuck in the contract still. So the reason I'm explaining this is because when a buyer has a financing contingency, and let's say, again, 45 days is very common. I would say that's probably the most common, but it's not uncommon for a buyer to have a 60-day closing with a financing contingency, and the sale is contingent on the financing. So if the buyer doesn't get the mortgage, they can cancel at any time. And so this is really important to understand, because if you have any sort of timeline or anything that you are kind of depending on, and depending on the sale for, you need to understand, I think it's very important that you fully understand that the sale can fall apart at any time if the buyer does not get that mortgage. Now, hopefully the buyer has done a really good job in working with their mortgage lender, and their mortgage lender has thoroughly checked the buyer's qualifications, and the buyer's realtor has done a really good job of making sure that the buyer has gone through all this stuff with the lender. And hopefully your realtor is also doing a really good job of doing these things and checking on these things. But that doesn't always happen, unfortunately. And so there are times where a buyer will think that they can get the mortgage. They don't see any reason why not. Maybe they have a great job, and um, there's no reason they don't. Maybe they make six figures, and there's, by all means, they should qualify for this mortgage for $700,000, let's say, which is pretty low for Maui. But let's say that they should, right? But maybe they don't know some of the requirements to get that mortgage. So some of those things include being at your job for 2 years. So if that buyer, maybe they've only been at their job for a year and a half, and they didn't think that was important to tell because they have a W-2 job and they make, they get a paycheck for $4,000 every 2 weeks. It's set, they get that paycheck and they think that they are dependable. Well, to the bank, that is not going to cut it. They need to be at their job for 2 years. Generally, that's kind of the norm across almost all lenders. And if you're not at your job for 2 years, then you would be denied. And so that could come up later on. Another thing that can be an issue is what we call the debt to income ratio, also known as the DTI. And this is important because in today's world, so many people have so much debt, from credit cards to car loans and personal loans, all these different types of debt that we tend to carry. Student loans is a big one also. And if the lender is going to look at how much monthly debt the buyer has, and the total obligation for debt repayment on the buyer cannot exceed 43, it's about 43 or 44% of their gross monthly income. So let's say the buyer that made you an offer and you accepted it with a financing contingency. Let's say that buyer has been at their job over 2 years, so that's not an issue, and they make $10,000 a month, and they have a car payment for $1,000, and they have personal loans and credit card payments and other debts that add up to another $3,000 a month. So that's $4,000 a month in total debt obligations. That's 40% of their $10,000 a month gross monthly income, which means they only have $400 a month, about $300 or $400 a month left over in their DTI that can be used towards the mortgage. So again, because it's I believe it's 44%. So let's say out of the $10,000 a month that buyer makes, the bank will allow them to spend $4,400 on monthly debt obligations, including the mortgage, their car payment, their property tax, insurance, all that stuff, and any other debt they have. So that can be a big challenge for a lot of buyers these days. In fact, when I've gone through it myself. When I tried to refinance properties, I have to make sure that my debt to income ratio is low enough that we don't have any kind of issues with that, because it's very challenging, especially in a high priced market like Maui, where a home mortgage could be $4,000 a month. In fact, that's probably on the lower end of mortgages. We have two houses, and that are both mortgages are about $4,000 a month, and those are not those are very low priced. Those are both around, I believe the mortgages are between 600 to 800,000, something like that. So it depends on the interest rate, obviously, and other factors, but those mortgages are very expensive. So that's a big factor again. And this is going back to the financing contingency. You don't want to get in a situation where you have a new place, you've got all these things going on and planned, and after being in this escrow sale with this buyer for a month or whatever it is, you get the email that, oh, it turns out they didn't qualify, they got rejected for the mortgage, and the sale is not happening. So now you're back to square one. So that was a long explanation, but has a lot of important things that I think it's really important that you understand. So I wanted to really take my time and go through them thoroughly. So thanks for sticking through all that. Now we're going to move on to the next method, which is selling your house directly to a cash buyer. So we are an alternative. Maui Home Buyers is a great example of somebody that provides this option. We are an alternative to listing with a realtor. We are certainly not for everybody, but we are a great alternative for some people, and it's up to you to decide if we're the right option or not. Now, going back to that example I gave in the beginning, where if you sold the house to the realtor for $900,000, you might only walk away with $825,000. You want to keep that in mind when you're talking to a cash buyer that's buying directly from you, because of course we are a business and we need to, we can't overpay for a property. So we need a fair price. And one of the ways that we make that price work for us, and being a business and staying profitable and not going out of business is by saving the commissions. So our goal is to get you the same amount of money for your home that you would have gotten if you sold it with a realtor, but without having to go through all the headaches. One of the things, we talked about how when you sell with a realtor, you will be signing the listing contract. And then again, the buyer's offer is 14 pages, and that's just the base contract. That doesn't include all of the addendum. So, which is basically a fancy real estate word for extra paper that's added into the contract. So those usually add up to another 4, 5, 6 pages. So a lot of times it's pretty common for your purchase contract to be somewhere between 20, maybe 22 to 24 pages in Hawaii. So now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're selling your home, it usually means that the buyer has a lot of reasons they can cancel, basically. Those 20 pages or so, almost, I don't want to say almost all of it, but a lot of it is talking about how the buyer can have a home inspection. If they don't like the results, they can cancel. They get to have a survey and you have to pay for the survey. And if they don't like the results, they can cancel. They have to have a termite inspection and so on. And so all these different things. If you live in a homeowners association, if you live in a condo, if it's a condo you're selling, a townhome, or any of those things, the buyer is going to require you to provide condo docs, which are documents from the homeowners association, and including the financial statements and other things. And you have to pay for those documents. They usually cost you about $300, $500, somewhere around there. And if the buyer doesn't like them, or for any reason, in fact, they don't even have to give a reason, they can just say, we don't approve of the condo docs and we're canceling. So that's, again, one of the cons from selling with a realtor. When you're selling to a cash buyer like us, usually that should not be an issue. I can't speak for other cash buyers, but I can speak for Maui Home Buyers. And I can say that Maui Home Buyers is not going to cancel a sale because of the current standing of the association. That's not what we're looking for. We are generally very familiar with the properties already because we've been in business, we've been in real estate in Hawaii for so many years. If you're in a condo, chances are we're pretty familiar with the complex already. And if there's some major issues going on, we probably already know about it. So we will already know to take those things into consideration beforehand. And if we don't, we'll take those things into consideration before we make our offer. So that's one thing to consider. Is also when you're comparing, you might, when you list with a realtor, you may receive some higher initial offers, but I don't want to say most of the time, but it's very, very, very common for those offers to be too good to be true. And what do I mean by that? I mean that if there's a reason why other units are selling, for this amount, or there's going to be a reason, right? Now, a lot of times, that buyer will be making the higher offer because they don't know about some issue. Let's say, for example, that you're in a condo complex, and let's take Kihei Villages. So Kihei Villages is a pretty well-known condo complex in North Kihei, and it's a large complex. So there's a lot of units there, a lot of people live there, and it's a very popular residential condo complex on Maui. And we've bought and sold a lot of condos at Kihei Villages, and we've seen a lot of units there. And one of the nice things about that complex is if you're located in the front row of buildings, there's a park and then you can kind of see the ocean. So if you're in one of those front buildings, a lot of them will have an ocean view. Now, let's say hypothetically, for example, that the county was getting ready to build a massive 4-story building in the park right in front of Kihei Villages. And you had one of those front row units that you were selling. And if you were selling with a realtor, the buyer might not know about the county's plans to build that building that would block your ocean view. And so to the buyer, that could be a very big factor and really affect how much they're willing to pay. So they might make an offer, and let's say they might offer you $600,000 for your condo, just again, as an example. Um, they might be willing to pay that until they find out about that building that's going to go up and interfere with their view. And at that time, when they learn about the ocean view going away, their offer is probably going to go down significantly. They might only be willing to pay 500,000 once they know that they're not going to have the ocean view anymore. Now, they might not even want to buy it at all, so they could cancel at that point. When you're selling to somebody like Maui Home Buyers, we will do our due diligence beforehand. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't surprises, because there have been times where there were unforeseen things that there was just no way that we could find out beforehand. One of those things being a title. If there's an issue with the title, that's something that we can find out beforehand, but it takes more time. So it doesn't really benefit to do a title check beforehand, unless we're just moving really slow and taking our time, and you just want to take your time and negotiate, then sure, we can do the title check while we're talking. But usually what happens is you want to kind of get this over with. You don't want to waste time. We'll have a quick chat, get an idea of what the condition of the property, and we'll probably take about an hour or so to do some research and figure out what the current market value is. And then we'll just figure out what, if there's, let's say there's $10,000 in repairs or whatever it is that would be needed to get it to that market value, then we subtract that, and there we have our offer and we're ready to go. The Going back to the title thing, we can help you if you do have title issues, and we're a really great option for that kind of situation. I don't think we've ever had a case where somebody had a title problem that was catastrophic, meaning that we were not interested. Like we'll always find a way to make it work. A lot of times the price will be lower, to reflect that, because usually what happens when there's a title issue is that there's things that need to be done to fix and clear up the title, but it's not a sure thing. So, and sometimes there's nothing you can do, and it's just not an insurable title, and it's very, very risky because you don't know if somebody could show up. We had a house in Waiahu on Maui that we were under contract to purchase, and we found out within a few days of making the agreement that the title was bad. Basically, it was not insurable, and the house had gone through a non-judicial foreclosure, which meant that the bank had done a foreclosure back in 2010, but they didn't do it through the court. So in a nutshell, the title company would not guarantee that we were the owners of the house. I guess that's the simplest way to put it. So if we had bought that house at the time, we agreed on a price of $800,000, and if we had bought that house for $800,000, somebody could have showed up the next day and said, "Oh, you don't own this house, I own it. Here, here's my paperwork showing it." And we would beat out $800,000. So because of that high risk, um, I explained to the seller, listen, this is a huge unforeseen issue that we didn't know about beforehand. We can proceed with the sale, but we do need to renegotiate and have make the price commensurate with the risk of the potentially losing this house at any time. And the fact that there is no way to fix the title. We can't cure it or fix the problem with the title. This is a permanent issue. And when we go to sell the house, we'll have the same problem. Nobody can ever take out a mortgage on the house because the title's bad. And the buyer that we would sell the house to is also going to need a discount and need the price to be reflective of the title problems. So the seller in that case didn't need to sell. For him, it just made sense to just keep the house in that case because it was rented out and making him monthly cash flow. And so we just agreed to let him cancel the sale, and it all worked out. He was very happy with us. In fact, he left us a 5-star review, I believe. But in any case, so those are some of the things that can happen with a title report. But getting back to the topic is that when we make our offer, we don't have that long 14 or 20-page contract. We just write up a simple 1-page purchase agreement that basically says the purchase price, well, the property address, first of all, the property address, the purchase price, how much the deposit would be, usually just, whatever, $1,000 or something, because we're usually going to be closing really fast. So the deposit's kind of irrelevant because we're not, it's not a 45 or 60-day escrow. It's usually a matter of maybe, a couple weeks at the most. So depending on the seller, that's really up to you. Is how quick do you need to sell and how quick do you need to close, and whatever you need, we'll figure out how to make it happen. So yeah, again, we'll have those things in there, the buyer and seller's name, and that's pretty much it, and then the basic stuff in there says, it'll mention about how the title company it'll say who we're using for the escrow and title company. And then it'll also say that they will be preparing the title report for us to review, and buyer and seller will both get a copy and be able to review it. But that's pretty much it. If we haven't actually seen the house, then we'll usually include something that says that we do have the right to inspect the house. So, but that when we say inspect, we're usually referring to me, again, Greg, and my partner David, and maybe one of our contractors will come with us sometimes, depending on the particular house. But we're just going to come over and do a walkthrough. That's pretty much it most of the time. So we're not going to be having a home inspector that's going to be going in the attic and, running all the electric and going up on the roof and checking for missing shingles and, checking for missing doorknob stoppers and, all these little things. We're not looking for all those things. So most of the time we're planning to do some renovations, at least some renovations anyways. So anyways, yeah, like I was saying, if we have not seen the property yet, we'll say something in there that says, we have the right to come take a look around, whenever you can, it's convenient for you, we'll schedule a time that we can come do a walkthrough, and just so we can see the condition, know what we're buying. And if it's not what was described or anything, there's surprises there, we do have the ability to cancel. We make that a quick short timeline. Usually we ideally would like to just see the house before we make the offer, but a lot of times the seller may not want to waste time. They just want to see what we can, for the right kind of offer or whatnot. So in a lot of cases, in fact, the house that we just bought last week, we didn't see it until about a week. I think it was almost, yeah, a week after we made the deal. And then we closed a week later. So it was a really kind of a short timeline. Not the shortest one we've done, but um, in that case, yeah, and everything was kind of as described. It was certainly in worse condition. If I'm being completely honest, we knew it wasn't perfect, but when we saw it, we certainly thought, oh, this is definitely worse than how it seemed. And we had seen pictures of from just a couple of years before, so, and it was in pretty good condition. Those pictures just a little dated, but when we saw it, it was pretty much it was rough and needed a whole lot of work. And so but we already were planning to do some renovations, so it was okay. We didn't need to, ask for repairs or anything like that. We don't ask for repairs. That's one of the advantages of working with us. Um, we we just take those things into account ahead of time. We usually will factor them into the price. But again, if we haven't seen the house beforehand, we're we're going to just have the option to come take a look at it, make sure it's what we expected, make sure it's how you described it. And if it's, if we get there and the entire house is gutted, there's no drywall or cabinets or flooring, and it's just basically studs inside, then we're probably going to have a talk and say, listen, when we agreed to buy it for $1.2 million, um, it sounded like the house was in decent condition, and it's not. So in extreme cases like that, we would need to have renegotiate. But that's very, very rare. In fact, I don't know that that has ever happened. We may have had that happen once or twice, but out of all the transactions we do, I would say 90 something percent of the time, we make the offer up front and we stick with it. And there's nothing, even if we find out there's more work than needed, we're not going to come back and ask you to, give us a discount for repairs or anything like that. So personally, I take a lot of pride in our word. And when we make an offer, we stand behind it, and that you can count on us to close no matter what happens. And a good example of this is a house in Wailea on the Kihei, South Kihei, and Wailea borderline on Maui. We made a deal to purchase this house in Kihei in March of 2020. And our closing date, I think, was April 2nd of 2020. And as everybody knows, around March 17th of 2020, the world stopped. And it was uncomfortable. It was scary. And we didn't know what was going to happen. And to be honest, it didn't turn out very good for us. But we were scared. And we certainly, I would be lying if I said that we didn't consider whether we should proceed with the sale. We did think about that. We did talk about it. But at the end of the day, we both, we just agreed that we had a $10,000 deposit on that house. And we, just to explore, so that we considered all options. We said, if we were to walk away from the sale, we would be giving up, $10,000 deposit. And that was more attractive to us. We really, if there were no consequences and we didn't have this business with this reputation in a small island like Maui, where it's really important for us to maintain our reputation, then the idea of canceling and just sacrificing and giving up the $10,000 was very, very attractive because $10,000 is, we knew that's how much we would be losing, whereas proceeding with buying the house could have led to us losing 50,000, 100,000, or hundreds of thousands of dollars if things had gotten really bad. Now, fortunately, the real estate market did not tank. It definitely slowed down. In fact, it came to a stop for a period of time. And this particular house was a house that we just did renovations on and then resold. It's not a house that we could have kept as a rental because of the location. It just was an expensive house. At that time, it was around $1 million house, which was before prices increased by 30% or whatever it is now. So now in today's market, that house is probably worth, actually, I think it's probably worth closer to 1.6 to 1.8 million, somewhere in that range. Especially now that we've done renovations. So in any case, back to this point of this story is that we did not cancel that purchase. That was the single scariest purchase that we've gone through. The one that we just actually closed on last week was also scary because interest rates have been shooting up so fast, and the real estate market has been grinding to a halt, and buyers are backing out of purchases left and right. And it's like the highest rate of buyers canceling on purchases, I think, ever, or something like, things are not looking very good for real estate right now. But again, we made this offer, we made this commitment, and we stick to it no matter what happens. I can't really foresee anything that could cause us to cancel unless, if the house burns down halfway through before we close, then we'll probably, again, we would probably try to renegotiate, since you'd likely be getting an insurance payout and you'd probably end up working out in your favor anyways. Yeah, there's very few cases. There would have to be something very extreme. But yeah, so going back to that story is we closed on the sale. The real estate market really just came to a complete halt. All the sales were canceling at the time, and it was a really scary time. But we ultimately, in fact, that was the time in our business that we made the decision, because that was the first time that we had a house that we were buying and the entire world turned upside down, and just nothing was for sure anymore. Everything we knew was gone, and we didn't know what tomorrow was going to be like. And it was a really, really scary time. And that was the first time we've been through anything like that. And that's when we sat down and talked this through and said, if we were to just cancel a purchase when something unexpected comes up, even if it's something huge like the pandemic that happened, that is, we have no value. Because we still have value, but that is really the biggest differentiator. And when you call Maui Home Buyers and you make a deal with us, that we are going to close the sale, unless there's just some things that are completely unforeseeable and unsolvable. And it's pretty much, there's not very many situations where we can't make the sale close. So that's what we decided. We need to stand by our word. We need to take the risk, and we might lose money, but that's what it's part of our business, and that's the risk we take in our business. And hopefully most of the work that we do ends up being profitable, but it doesn't always, and in this case it didn't. It was not profitable. Fortunately, we didn't lose money. We pretty much, I would say, broke even on that transaction. We did, because there was so much uncertainty at the time. As soon as we closed on the house, we did all the renovations as fast as we could, and then we listed the house for sale, and we just tried to sell it as fast as we could because we didn't want to be holding that expensive house in this high-end market if things just kept getting worse. And things got worse and worse through the few months that we owned it. We ended up selling it around, I think, September. And at that time, Maui was still closed to visitors, basically. So all these rich mainland people that would normally buy this kind of house in Wailea couldn't come to Maui to see it. So fortunately, thankfully, there we found a family in Maui that wanted that home as their family's home, and they got a great deal on it. Um, and they love it. In fact, I saw them a couple months ago and talked to them, and they are very, very, very happy with the house. And it was our loss, but their gain, and they got an incredible deal on that house. And they bought at just the perfect timing, and they got the low interest rate and everything. So couldn't be happier for them. And for us, yeah, we didn't make money. We did about, what, 5 or 6 months worth of work on that house. Um, or maybe a little more than that, but let's say 6 months worth of work on that house, and we did not get paid, basically. So that hurts, but that's again part of our business. And I'm just happy that we didn't lose money, and I'm happy that it didn't put us out of business. And I'm really proud and happy of the fact that we were able to stand behind our word and close on that transaction, even when the seller fully was expecting us to cancel. Again, if you picture the way things were at that time, go back in your mind to, March 20th of 2020, and it was just such a scary time. I think, like, no matter what was going on in our lives, we were like, everything, just put it on hold and let's see what happens, because nobody had any idea what was going to happen in the world. So anyways, that's a very long story just to explain how one of the differentiators with us. I kind of lost my train of thought here, but some of the other advantages of working with us, we always will just pay all cash, so we will not have a financing contingency. We will, like I said, we will come and look at the property, and sometimes we'll bring our contractor, but we usually will not have like inspection, home inspector contingencies, and all of those extra things. And most of all, I would say, just a real easy way to sum it all up is that we are here to provide a service to you. Because you're not paying a commission, and we're sharing that savings in the sale. I see my job as serving you, the person selling their house in Maui, because you're choosing to come work with us. So I want to make sure that your experience working with Maui Home Buyers is the best you could have ever imagined. I want you to be so happy with working with us that you tell everybody that they should try selling their home to Maui Home Buyers. So anything that we can do to make you feel that way is, we're here and eager and ready to do it. One of the other examples or differentiators we didn't talk about was that when you sell your house with a realtor, you are bound to the closing date on the purchase contract. And that's a big deal, because usually when you sell your house, you're also simultaneously buying another house or moving into a rental or somewhere, another, home that is also on a different timeline. And so you really need to, unless you are able to buy that home before you sell your house, which not many of us are, then you really need to line up those timelines very, very closely. And it's very critical to have that done right. And if for some reason your new home is not ready, and or there's some kind of delay, that can be a big problem. And you're stuck having to sell your house and close on this certain date, but you have nowhere to go. So a lot of times you might be stuck going to a hotel, and you know, we all know how much Maui hotels cost. They're not cheap. No, I don't think there's any cheap hotels in Hawaii. Um, or you may have to stay with family, which is not so bad, just an inconvenience, but um, it's still a big deal to know, you're bound to that date in the contract. You can ask the buyer if they can extend and you can have more time, but the buyer doesn't have to. They can say, no, you have to be out. I'm moving in. That's it. I already sold my house, so I have to move in. So anyways, that's a really big deal. Um, the difference with Maui Home Buyers is that we do not bind you to the closing date. Um, for the most part, we remain flexible. And it's, again, that's part of the service of working with us. Within reason. I don't want to say that, it's just open-ended completely, because we can't, if you we're supposed to close in 10 days and then you call and say, hey, can we actually just push the closing back 2 or 3 years? We're probably going to say, well, that's not, that doesn't make any sense. But within reason, we will certainly be flexible. And, we need a little bit of notice, because usually it's a lot of funds that we're transferring. And we have stuff to sign, the closing documents with the escrow company and all those things that kind of have to just be planned around the closing date, and usually about 3 days beforehand. So, but as long as we have a little bit of notice, yeah, we are pretty much always able to accommodate whatever timeline you need. So, an example we have is we bought a condo. What was this, back in February, where the seller needed the cash from the sale of his condo in order to buy the next condo that he was going to go live in, because he didn't have $1 million. So we worked it out so that the sale would close and he would get his cash, and then he'd still be able to stay in the condo for, I think it was only like a week or so, but sometimes it's longer, until the sale of his new house closes and he was able to move in. So, anyways, there's a lot of differences like that. There's so much more. I could go on, but I think this has been a long enough video for now. And I appreciate you sticking through it. If you do have a house or condo in Maui that you're interested in selling, or just considering selling, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to talk with you and let you know what we can do. And there's no obligations at all whatsoever. We are here to help you. And if we're not the right option for you, we are happy to refer you to whoever it may be, whoever might be able to help you in your situation. Um, but again, yeah, we just want to make sure we can serve our community, help as much as possible, and hopefully we are the best solution for you. But again, if we're not, it's no hard feelings, and we're still happy to chat with you. And hopefully we can share some of our experience and knowledge. And we really hope that it will be helpful for you. I really hope that this video has been helpful and has opened your eyes to a few of the different things that it's important to be aware of during the sales process. And hopefully it's helped you decide what's the best route for you to sell. So again, regardless of how you choose to sell, I do think that everybody should call Maui Home Buyers or another cash buyer, and just to get an offer and find out what they can do, and just to see if it's right for you, because you never know. Every house is different, every situation is different. And there have been a lot of sellers that have called me and I've said, you know what, in your situation, you it's not even worth it. I'm not even going to make you an offer. You should call a realtor and let me help you find the best realtor for this situation. But there's also been a lot of people that have called us where I've said, you definitely should not work with a realtor, because you're not going to meet the timelines you need. You're not going to get what you need. We are the right solution, particularly when somebody needs to close fast, or they need a sale they can count on, that is, they know is going to close, and a sure thing. So, but in any case, those are like the two extremes. 90% of the sales are going to be somewhere in the middle between those two. And so there's different ways that we can be more helpful, and everybody's situation is different. So like I said, we would hopefully we are the right option to buy your house. And if you need to sell your house fast, or if you need to sell your house for cash, um, and you're on Maui or anywhere in Hawaii, Oahu, Kauai, Big Island, please do call us. We are most likely in those cases your best option. And in a lot of other cases, we're also, if not the best option, a very competitive option. And so a lot of times, maybe our price isn't higher, maybe it's comparable to what the realtor would get you. But the advantage of how fast and easy this process is with Maui Home Buyers is so much more attractive than the potentially 3 to 6 months and 20 pages of contract, and then plus the other contract, and then plus the other documents, and all the other inspections and painting and staging and all these things that you got to do to list your house on the MLS. If the sales prices were the same, then in my opinion, it's a no-brainer that dealing with the cash buyer like Maui Home Buyers is so much easier. It's so much more convenient. I mean, why would you even consider any other option if that were the case? Now, of course, we're not always the highest offer. So that's really what we need to determine in order to decide if we're the best option for you or not. If you can get more by selling on MLS, and you don't need to sell in any certain timeline, and you can take your time, and the house is in perfect condition and you're living in it, so it's not costing you anything, and so on. In a perfect situation like that, that's a case where it's pretty unlikely that we can compete, and most likely that you'd be best off with the realtor and listing on MLS. But the majority of the situations we see are not that perfect. For example, if it was a rental property and the tenants cause damage, let's say they trashed the house and then you had to have them evicted, and now you've got this house vacant that's trashed. And we dealt with this house in Makawao, this exact story, and the seller got estimates for repair. It was going to be $100,000 to fix the house, and he was sick of it. He's been, tenants been causing trouble forever, and he just didn't want to put $100,000 into this house just to be able to rent it out for $2,500 a month again and keep going with the headaches. So in that case, the house was losing money every single month, and listing with a realtor was it was such a time consuming, long process that it just didn't make any sense. We were the perfect solution for that seller, and he was thrilled and very, very happy with his choice and working with us. And so were we. I feel like we provided a great service to him, and I'm really happy that he found us. The other situation, you might want to consider is if you have that rental property where the tenant is not paying, or if the tenant is causing any kind of other trouble, and maybe you need to evict them and it's just getting to be a long, complicated process, we can handle all those things. We hate to have to evict someone, especially in today's housing market and how hard it is to find a rental in Maui. And again, all of Hawaii, the rental market is so competitive now. But the reality is that if somebody just stops paying their rent and they don't work with the landlord, and they don't make an effort, then it has to happen sometimes. So we will handle that part. That's another example where you probably don't want to list your house in that case, because the tenant that's causing trouble is probably not going to make it look good for the people when they come to see it. They're probably not going to cooperate, you know. That's a situation where I feel like there's no comparison. Maui Home Buyers is your best option. I can almost guarantee it, hands down. And we have dealt with that many times. And yeah. Anyways, those are just a few examples. There's plenty of situations. You know, we've dealt with people that were going through probate where they needed somebody to kind of walk them through the process, and it's certainly not a happy time if you're going through probate. That means you lost somebody that you love, and I personally can empathize with that. I've, in fact, tomorrow is the 24-year anniversary from the day my dad died, and so I can certainly empathize and understand those feelings. And we never wish that on anybody, but we do um, feel honored to have the opportunity to help people when that does come up. And you know, going through things like probate where we can use our experience. And so personally, I've been in real estate for 15 years, so I can use the experience and the things I've learned. And if I can help somebody with the experience that I have, um, that's the greatest thing in life to me. I love to be able to give back and help, and I'm honored to. So again, don't hesitate to reach out, ask us for help, even if you don't want to sell or you don't want to sell to us. No problem. I totally understand, and there's no hard feelings. I am honored to help, and provide my experience to give back any way that I can. And so, anyways, yeah, again, we'll wrap this up. I keep going on and on, but I appreciate you listening and going through this entire explanation with me. And I hope again that it has been very helpful to you. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out anytime. Especially obviously if you have a house or a condo in Hawaii, anywhere on the island of Maui, or a home in Oahu or Kauai that you're considering selling, feel free to call or text us anytime with any questions. Whatever we can do to help. I would rather you call and text too much than not enough, because I want to make sure that you have all the information that you have and that you need in order to make the best decision. Rather than, you know, like I said, we've seen people where a seller met with a realtor, thought they seemed great, so they signed the listing agreement, and then later on found out, oh, the realtor never did anything. A month later, the house isn't even listed on the market, and they're required to pay them commissions, even though they found their own buyer. So, anyways, I would much rather you, you know, call or text too much than not enough, because we want to make sure we can help you as much as we can. And again, even if that means helping you find the best realtor, we're happy to do so. I sincerely mean that. Um, Again, I can't say it enough. It's a privilege and an honor, and I love helping people. I like to think of my mom. My mom lives in a home by herself, our family home that we all grew up in. And like I said, my dad passed away, so she's there all alone. And she's on the other side of the world, and I feel helpless. And I just hope that there's people there that will take care of her the way that I try to take care of others when I find them in need. So um, I say that because I want you to understand, you know, if you are that um, widow, you know, single mom, or you know, whatever the situation is, a young man, or that's you know, or a family, it doesn't matter what the situation is. If you need help and you need somebody that knows the real estate industry, I'm here, and I'm happy to contribute in any way that I can. Of course, I obviously would love to be the best solution and to be the one to buy your property, but um I know that the reality is most of the time that's not the case. Maybe it's 50-50. Half the time we're the best option, and then half the time they're better off calling a realtor. So, it just depends, like we've said, on your situation. There's no one answer for everybody. But what I can say for sure is that everybody should absolutely call Maui Home Buyers before you list your house for sale, before you accept an offer from another buyer, before you commit to any other sale, because you never know. It doesn't hurt, right? It only takes a few minutes of your time. Yeah, if you got some pictures you can email or text to me, that's great. That helps a lot. You just tell me the address, and the general condition of the property, and usually within an hour or two I can let you know, okay, we can do something around, probably be in this price range. And we can usually close as quick as 10 days, depending on the title company. We're depending on how long they take to prepare the title and the deed. But we've closed in 10 days before. And we can close in, if you need a long time, we'll go as long as you need. So, anyways, all right, we are going to wrap it up for real this time. I've been going on and on, but I'm very passionate about what I do. And like I've said over and over in this video, I just love to help people. I would love to help you solve your problems with your property or whatever it may be. I love real estate. I love houses, condos. Maui, Hawaii is my home. Um, and we're just passionate about helping and giving back. And so, again, call or text anytime. I'm just happy to help out, and we will happily make you an offer. And when we do make an offer, it's generally the way we structure our offers. We'll make you an all cash as is offer to buy your house fast. And then if there's we can always adjust those things later if need be. So if you want a longer closing time, then we'll adjust it from and go from there. But yeah, if you don't specify, I'm going to assume you want us to pay all cash as is, and that's what our offer will consist of. So, all right. Thanks again for tuning in and checking us out. And if you do have a property you want to sell, like I said, you can call or text, or you can go to our homepage and fill out the form where you just provide us with your address and your email address. And it helps to put your phone number too, but you don't have to. And we'll get you a cash offer as is, to sell your house in Maui, the quick and easy way. So look forward to hearing from you, and aloha.